The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of Lexington Community Radio or its board of directors. The views expressed are solely those of the programmers.
You are listening to Off the Cuff. Now, here's your host, Adam Banks.
Welcome, everybody, to Off the Cuff. I am Adam Banks, broadcasting from Lexington, Kentucky. Thank you for listening to the show, and thank you for tuning in to WLXU 93.9 FM. In addition to listening on the radio, you can stream the show live from the station website at radiolex.us to listen to us from anywhere in the entire world. I am broadcasting from not the Deborah Hensley Studios, still broadcasting from my home studio. Today is May the 8th, 2025, and yes, this should be the last episode of me broadcasting from my home studio. We should be up and running at the Deborah Hensley Studios at the radio station next week, and I'm excited about that because that's going to bring a stronger signal for all of our listeners. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. And I started off the show last week talking about graduation because graduation season is in full effect. And I started off the show giving a high school graduation speech. And I mentioned last week on the show that I eventually wanted to give a graduation speech to all the graduating students across the board, not just high school, but also grade school students, college students as well. And the reason I am doing this is because for some reason my number must have gotten lost. No schools have reached out to me to give a speech. So I said, you know what? Why not just give a graduation speech from my own platform right here on the show? And last week I gave a graduation speech to the high school students, but this week, folks, what I would like to do is give a college graduation speech for all of the college graduates out there. Now, you college graduates that are graduating very, very soon, maybe even this Saturday, this speech is for you. This is for all college graduates. And college is one of those things that I know it's an exciting time, but it's also a very stressful time to be a college graduate because you have no money, you have no job, you really are just standing at the brink of the unknown. You don't know what's coming next, and it can cause a lot of anxiety. So I hope that this speech that I give the graduating class of 2025, I hope this speech impacts you in some way, some shape, form, or fashion. So here, ladies and gentlemen, is the college graduation speech that I would give if I were to be asked to speak at your college. But since I wasn't, I'm just going to give you my college graduation speech using my own platform. Now, with this, we're going to have a little music. Perfect. All right, let's begin. Good morning, everyone. To the president, to the faculty, the proud parents and families, and most importantly, the class of 2025. Thank you so much for having me. It is an incredible honor to stand here, not as just a fellow graduate myself, but as someone who knows the weight and wonder of what this moment means. I may have not have walked this journey with you, but I know what it feels like to stare into the future with a mix of excitement and fear. I know what it's like to wonder, what now? So let me start by telling you this. You did it. And not just the assignments, the deadlines, the tests, and the Zoom classes. You showed up. When showing up wasn't always easy, you finished what you started. That's no small thing. That's grit. That's heart. That's character. But now comes the big part. Because the world isn't waiting to hand you a roadmap. The truth is, there's no perfect blueprint for what comes next. That can be terrifying, but it's also the greatest gift you'll ever get. It means the future is wide open. It means you get to shape it. So here's what I want to talk about today with you all. What you do with this freedom, not just the degrees you'll carry, but the life you're about to build. You're going to hear a lot of messages over the next few months from family, from mentors, from society about success, and most of them will sound like checklists. Get the job, buy the house, climb the ladder, make the money. And hey, there's nothing wrong with success. Ambition is beautiful. Work hard, be proud, but don't lose yourself chasing someone else's idea of a life well lived. Because real success, the kind that doesn't just fill your bank account but fills your soul, that comes from doing what you love. From waking up excited, from being proud of who you are when no one's watching. Let me tell you something I've learned, not just from textbooks, but from experience. You can do everything right and still feel lost if you're not living with purpose. Find what lights you up, not what impresses others, not what's trending, but what makes you feel alive. What pulls you out of bed in the morning? What makes time disappear when you're doing it? For me, that was creating my radio show, Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. I started it with nothing but a mic and a dream and a whole lot of doubts. There were times I wanted to give up, times I questioned, is anyone even listening to me? But I kept going. Not because I was chasing fame, but because I loved it. I needed it. It was mine. So, whatever your version is of that, chase it with everything you've got. Because doing what you love consistently through the highs and the lows builds a life you won't regret. And speaking of consistency, let's talk about that for a second. Because passion gets you started, but consistency keeps you going. You won't always feel motivated. You won't always feel inspired, but if you show up every day, if you give your best, even when no one's clapping, that's how greatness happens. Quietly, daily, and persistently. There's a quote I love. It says, "Don't measure your life by what you start. Measure it by what you finish." Show up. Keep showing up. That's the real flex. And finally, when you're building your career, don't forget to build your life. Celebrate more. Call your parents. Take the trip. Laugh too loud. Say yes to love. Be kind. Give back. Dance even when you feel awkward. Take the picture. Say what you feel. Don't just exist, but live. Because this world needs you, not the version of you that's polished for a resume, but the real you. The one with the story, the one with the scars, the one who's still figuring it out, but keeps moving forward anyway. So class of 2025, here is my final thought. You are not the future. You are the now. This moment is yours. Go make it unforgettable. Congratulations. Thank you. And go live a life that feels as good as it looks. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my college graduation speech for the class of 2025. Congratulations to all of you college graduates out there. You are about to embark on such an exciting future, and I am excited for you. But folks, we do have a great show ahead of you today. You are listening to Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
Can't touch this. Can't touch this. Can't touch this.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. It doesn't get much more 1990s than this song right here. You Can't Touch This by MC Hammer. One thing about doing radio is you really have to focus on different sounds. You really can't focus on images. This isn't a television show. You can't see anything. So a lot of the topics that we discuss on this show, I have to be careful when I like to play clips for the audience, because it's important for the audience to be able to just hear the audio and understand it rather than hearing and seeing, because you can't see anything on the radio. So it made me really change the way I think when I am looking for clips for this show, because I have to ask myself, will the audience understand it by just hearing the audio? And it made me start thinking of all the different types of sounds that we hear that are recognizable. Things that we hear that we right away know what it is when we hear it. I've never thought more about sounds and the different types of sounds than when I started doing radio, because that's how my thinking has to be focused on. The different sounds that people hear. And there are a lot of recognizable sounds throughout life that we can recognize right off the bat by just hearing the sound. And it made me start thinking of some of the most recognizable sounds throughout time. And just by hearing certain sounds, we can identify what the sound is, where it come from. And there are so many different sounds out there, folks, that I have to categorize it by decades. And that's what I want to do on this segment. I want to talk about recognizable sounds, sounds that you will recognize right off the bat by just hearing what the sound is. And we're going to start in the decade of the 1990s. And eventually, I would like to go through more decades than the 90s, but on this particular segment, I would like to talk about the most recognizable sounds from the 1990s. And folks, there are a ton of recognizable sounds that you will hear in this list, and we're going to dial it back to the 1990s. It was a time when the internet was brand new, CDs ruled our shelves, and Saturday morning cartoons were just beginning. You just didn't hear the 90s. You felt it with every beep, with every buzz, and every boot up. When you heard a sound, you knew where it come from and what it was for. And these particular sounds that I'm going to play, I feel like are the most recognizable sounds that we've ever heard from the decade of the 90s. So, folks, when I play these sounds, you'll instantly recognize where the sound comes from, what it is, why we have it. So I'm excited to play it for you. So, folks, the thing about working from a computer, you really never know what's going to come across the radio. Me working from home, there's a lot of difficulties that I'm trying to push through, but hopefully you'll be able to hear these sounds with clarity. These sounds are definitely iconic, and we're going to start the list with one of the most recognizable sounds from the 1990s, and that is the sound of the dial-up internet connection. It's just a chaotic symphony of beeps and buzzes and screeches marked by a dial tone phone. And when you hear this, you instantly know what it is. It's dial-up internet. And if you don't really remember what it sounds like, I'm going to play it for you now. Take a listen. This is one of the most recognizable sounds from the 1990s, the dial-up internet connection sound. I mean, think about that. I mean, when you hear that, that brings back so much nostalgia. You know that you have the world at your fingertips at that point. When you hear that sound, you're connecting, you're getting ready to get online. Now, the internet has come a long way. Now you can just open up your computer, open up your phone. There's no dial-up required. You can go straight to the internet. But back in the day, back in the 1990s, you used to have your internet hooked up to a phone connection. And your phone literally had to dial up an internet phone number for you to connect to the internet. And because of that, so many people from that decade, or people that might have not have been born in that decade, but lived through it, recognizes that sound if they ever got on the internet. It's one of the most recognizable sounds from the 1990s. And when you got on the internet back in the day, you were welcomed, if you had American Online, by this very familiar voice. You've got mail, which is another recognizable sound. Take a listen.
You've got mail.
Just hearing that right there, you've got mail, lets you know that you had pending messages in your mailbox to listen to. Two of the most recognizable sounds ever. Now, also, when you got on your computer, you usually had to use some type of software. Most people from the 90s used a Microsoft Windows software. So this next sound is one of the most recognizable sounds from the 90s, and it's also from the internet. This is the Windows 95 startup sound, and you'll instantly recognize it when you hear it. No, that's not it. That is the internet. But here is the recognizable sounds of the Windows 95 startup. Take a listen. So it was beautiful. It sounded like just a very relaxing symphony playing in the background. That lets you know that you're on your computer and you're ready to rock and roll. Now, when you were connected to the internet, one of the best things about the internet from the 1990s is chat rooms. You know, you didn't just have AOL chat. You also had this little chat room called ICQ, which was one of my favorite chat rooms of all time. I think it's probably because it was the first chat room that I ever got on. ICQ was so popular. At least where I was from, it was popular. Everybody used it. And when people got on that chat room, you would get messages, and you were notified that you had a message by just a small sound. And that ICQ sound was a little voice just saying, uh-oh. And every time you heard that sound, uh-oh, that let you know that you had a new message from somebody, which makes it a very recognizable sound from the 1990s. That's all it was. Just a small little uh-oh to let you know that you had a message. Uh-oh. I mean, when you heard that sound, you got so many emotions flooding through you. You were excited. You were a little nervous. You were anxious. Who is this message from? What are they going to say? Is it my crush that just messaged me? So many emotions were evoked just by hearing that small ICQ uh-oh notification. Man, if I could have that every time I got a text message, it would bring back all the feels. Okay, this next recognizable sound, folks, is going to be from the PlayStation 1 startup sound. Everyone that grew up in the 90s or lived through the 90s probably had a PlayStation. And when you turned on the PlayStation, you were welcomed with this very recognizable sound. And when people hear this, they're going to automatically be thrown back into nostalgia because this is the sound that you heard every time you turned your PlayStation 1 on. Take a listen. Now, PlayStation has come out with different consoles, PlayStation 2, 3, and 4, and 5, but they have never quite got more of an iconic opening than they had on their very first PlayStation, and they never did keep that startup sound for the other PlayStations. They always would change the startup sound whenever they would create a new PlayStation console, but the very first PlayStation console, I really do feel like, had the best startup sound. Okay, this next recognizable sound from the 1990s is very simple. This is just the noise of TV static. Remember when you would turn on your TV and you would just see white snow on your TV screen? Well, that white snow had a sound to it. Take a listen. And that's all it was. It was just this sound. It was the sound of static. And they call this white noise, static noise, you could call it. And if you really listen to it for a little bit, it's kind of relaxing. It kind of clears your mind a little bit. And I know this because, did you know that sometimes people play this sound on their phone because it helps them sleep? They consider this white noise. Some studies suggest that just by listening to this for 15 minutes will clear your mind, will relax you. So that is just simply white noise from a television screen, but it's very recognizable from the 1990s. Okay, next up, another recognizable sound from that decade is this sound right here. This came from home videos. Don't you remember home videos? Talking about movies that came out on VHS and DVD. Whenever you popped in a home video that you just purchased, it was very exciting because you owned a tangible piece of that movie. You owned the movie. You could watch it whenever you wanted. Well, home movies were always welcomed with this sound right here. They called this the home video sound remastered. And this lets you know that the sound of the movie had been remastered to fit your home video, to fit your TV screen. So every home movie that you would pop in, I'm not talking about home movies that you created. I'm talking about home videos that you owned, home videos that you bought of movies that you bought. So let's say that Toy Story was a movie that you bought on VHS or DVD. You were always welcomed by this particular sound, letting you know that the sound of this movie has been remastered to fit your television screen. A very recognizable sound. Take a listen. Still gives me chills whenever I hear it. Okay, next up, another very recognizable sound from the 1990s is the Nokia ringtone sound. Cell phones were just starting to gain popularity in the 90s, and I feel like by the time 1994, 95 rolled around, everybody had a Nokia. Everybody had a Nokia cell phone. It was really one of the first personal cell phones that people owned. And Nokia was the brand that everybody owned. And cell phones didn't used to have different ringtones. It had one particular ringtone, and it was this ringtone right here, which makes it a very recognizable sound that you will remember. I mean, it makes me want to look in my pocket to see if my cell phone is ringing. Whenever I heard that noise, I would instantly recognize what it is. And anyone who had a cell phone or lived through the 90s, when they heard that, they might not recognize it right off, but they're thinking, I've heard that sound before. Well, that's because it used to be in everybody's pocket. That right there used to be in everyone's pocket. All right, next up, another famous recognizable sound is one of my personal favorites. It's the sound of a pinball machine. Everybody that lived through that decade, if you didn't have a PlayStation or an Xbox or a Nintendo, one of your favorite ways to kill time was to play with a pinball machine. You might have even had a PlayStation or a Nintendo, and you still loved playing the pinball machine, especially when you went to places like Pizza Hut. But just the sounds of a pinball machine is very recognizable. One of the most recognizable sounds from the 90s. Take a listen. I absolutely love it. And one more here on the list, and this recognizable sound also comes from home videos when you would buy a home video, and this was particularly a Disney video. Disney would always play this sound to let you know that you have and you now own a Walt Disney home video. whether it be The Little Mermaid or Aladdin or The Lion King. This sound was always at the beginning of every Disney movie if you bought it on home video. So you will recognize this sound right here. Walt Disney Home Video presents, and then it would show you your title. And that, folks, is some of the most recognizable sounds from the 1990s. And eventually, I would like to go through different decades and talk about some of the most recognizable sounds from each decade. But I wanted to start with one of my favorite decades of all time, and that is the 1990s. All right, folks, we still have lots more Off the Cuff with Adam Banks coming your way after these words. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. This is an amazing song by The Cure, Boys Don't Cry. And this song was actually released on this day in history in 1979. Today is May the 8th. And folks, not only was this one of the things that happened on this day in history, but a lot of amazing things happened on this day in history, May the 8th. For instance, on this day in history, May the 8th, 1792 is when the U.S. establishes the military draft. The draft was a way for the military to pick their soldiers, and anyone 18 and above was eligible to be drafted. Now, typically, they did not draft beyond the age of 35 years old. They started at 18. You were more likely to get drafted at the age of 18 than you were 35, but they started at 18 and they ended at 35. But it was on this day in history that the U.S. established the military draft. It was on this day in history, May the 8th, 1886, is when Jacobs Pharmacy in Atlanta sells the very first Coca-Cola. Some say that the first Coca-Cola actually contained cocaine. On this day, May the 8th, 1912, film and television production and distribution studio Paramount Pictures is founded. Think about all of the movies that Paramount has created. It was on this day that they established that company. Without Paramount, we might have not have seen some of the movies that we have grown to love. On this day in history, May the 8th, 1959, is when Little Caesars Pizza is founded by Mike Ilitch and his wife, Marion Ilitch, in Garden City, Michigan. Little Caesars, not the best pizza in the world, but probably the most affordable pizza in the world, and it became a very popular pizza chain. And in the 50s, there was nothing else like that. Sure, there were other pizza places in the world, but Little Caesars was really the first pizza chain to be established that so many people started as their own personal business. They sold the rights for other people to be able to put in their own Little Caesars in their hometown, and that's why you have so many Little Caesars across America, because it became a franchisable business. And it was on this day in history that it was created. And finally, on this day in history, May the 8th, 1967, Muhammad Ali is indicted for refusing induction into the U.S. Army. We started off this list talking about the military draft. Well, Muhammad Ali, his name was called during the draft, and he was drafted to the U.S. military, the U.S. Army, but he refused his calling. He did not go. He said that he was not going to fight for a country that wouldn't fight for him. So he did not go, and because of it, he got indicted. Folks, if you get drafted, it's not an option. It's not a choice that you can make. Will I go or will I not go? No, when you get drafted, you have to go. You have to pack your bags and you have to go if you get drafted. And Muhammad Ali is no different. Just because he's a famous boxer doesn't make him exempt from not having to go. His name was called, but he still refused. And because of that, he was indicted. And folks, that are some of the things that happened on this day in history. And folks, this seems like a great place to take off the cuffs Song of the Week break. So how about a little Bruno Mars and Rose with their song APT? Enjoy. We'll be back after the song. I did not get a chance to make it to the Derby this year. I've only been to the Kentucky Derby one time, and really one time was enough for me. I've never been a really big fan of horse racing. Don't really understand it enough to get into it, and I never do good when I bet on horses anyway. So the Kentucky Derby is never at the top of my list of things to attend, but it is a great event. It epitomizes what Kentucky is. When people think about Kentucky, I hope that they picture the Derby in their mind when they picture Kentucky, because that is such a great picture of what Kentucky is like. Nice clothes, smiling faces, horses running around, people being happy, just a bunch of Southern belles wearing their hats and the dudes wearing their suits and their top hats. That is Kentucky to me. So I do love the event. And America and the world has their eyes on this state during the Kentucky Derby. It is a huge event. And the 2025 Derby was ran this past Saturday. It was branded as the 151st running of the Kentucky Derby, presented by Woodford Reserve. And it was on May the 3rd at Churchill Downs in Louisville. Now, attendance was down typically than what it usually has. And I think that's partly because the economy is so bad, people don't have any money. People don't have any money to buy a ticket, let alone bet on horses and buy the drinks that are in there. So the attendance was down, but it made viewership rise because there were less people at the Derby. More people were watching it at home, and more people turned into the Derby this year than they have in the last 20 or 30 years. So people are still interested in the event, but the Derby was won by a horse called Sovereignty. That's hard to say. I don't know who comes up with these names. It's stupid. But Sovereignty won the Kentucky Derby. The Sovereignty was trained by Bill Mott, who won his second Derby, the first since he trained Country House, who was elevated to first place following the disqualification of Maximum Security in the 2019 Kentucky Derby. It was the first Derby victory for the Venezuelan jockey Junior Alvarado, and the first win in the race for Shakia Mohammed bin Rashad. And despite poor weather conditions and a sloppy racing surface, Churchill Downs reported an attendance of 147,406 people for this Derby. Still quite a bit of people, not as much, but still a pretty impressive number. The all sources betting handle on the Derby and the entire racing card set records of 234.4 million and 349 million respectively. NBC Sports reported an average of 17.7 million viewers across NBC and Peacock for this Derby. It says here that it was the most since 1989. So yes, there was more people that watched this Derby in the last 30 years. This one right here. The start of the Kentucky Derby saw some crowding among the horses that broke closer to the rail after Citizen Bull bore out from inside the post position. Sovereignty and Journalism dueled together until inside the final furlong, when Sovereignty began to draw away. Sovereignty's final margin over Journalism was 1.5 lengths. Bazia, who drew in from the also eligible list, closed from 15th down the backstretch to finish third. Final, Gambit, who ran last until the end of the backstretch, finished in fourth, and Owen Almighty held on to finish fifth. So if you placed a bet of $2 on the horse of Sovereignty, if you placed him to win, you won $17.96 for every $2 that you bet. So if you bet like $20, you won almost $1,000 on that horse. If you bet him to place, you won $7.50 per $2, and if you put him to show, you won $5.58 per $2. So there you go, folks. That was the results of the Kentucky Derby. The total winnings that will be split for the first place winner between the trainer, the owner, and the jockey was $3.1 million. They take that and they split that purse. The jockey gets so much, the trainer gets so much, and the owner gets so much. Pretty hefty payday for all of those guys. So congratulations to the winners, the horse, the trainer, the jockey, and the owner. A job well done, and a great way to represent this state of Kentucky. All right, folks, stick with us. We still have one more segment to go. We'll be right back.
I'd like to buy the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honeybees and snow white turtle doves.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. Last segment of the hour. Today's national holiday is National Have a Coke Day. And we celebrate this day because it was on this day, folks, in history, as I said in our previous segment, that the very first Coca-Cola was sold. Now, we've done a segment on this show where we've talked about the most iconic commercials of all time, and the very first Coke commercial made the list because it had this very popular jingle, "I'd like to buy the world a Coke." And one of the reasons that commercial was so famous is because of this jingle right here. This jingle attached to the commercial made the commercial that much more iconic. But we are back talking about Coca-Cola because it was on this day that Coke was sold in the world. That's why today's national holiday is National Have a Coke Day. And this day began more than 125 years ago because Coca-Cola was created as a cocaine-fueled medicinal elixir. Coke eventually morphed into the non-narcotic soda of choice for the baby boomers who came of age in the 1960s. As the company grew, it added other flavors and varieties of the original Coke. Today, the Coca-Cola Company continues to be relevant as the largest soft drink company in the world, expanding its uniquely American taste into the world's largest emerging markets to become a global brand. So not only is Coca-Cola a drink, it's its own brand. When you see that brand, you know what it is. Coca-Cola is a huge brand. They sell all kinds of Coke paraphernalia, or whatever you want to call it. They sell a lot of things that has the name Coke on it. And Coke is such an iconic brand. But today we're really focusing on the soda Coca-Cola. On May the 8th, 1886, Dr. John Pemberton sold the first glass of Coca-Cola at Jacob's Pharmacy in Atlanta, which was on this day in history. In 1892 to 1894, Coca-Cola is bottled by Mississippi-based Joseph Bernhardt. In 1916, the unique classic Coca-Cola glass bottle with its contoured shape hits the market. And I honestly feel like that Coke in a bottle, in a glass bottle, is better than Coke in a can or Coke in a plastic bottle. Something about the taste of a Coca-Cola in a glass bottle is just better. And you don't really get to enjoy that because it's not so common that they sell Coke in a bottle anymore. You usually have to buy it in a plastic bottle or a can, or you get it out of a machine, out of a fountain machine. But some places you still can buy Coke from a glass bottle. And if you can, if that's available to you to do that, because nothing quite tastes the same like Coke out of a glass bottle. I love it. In 1971, Coca-Cola airs one of the most iconic ads in the history of advertising, the "I'd like to buy the world a Coke" commercial. Hence why it made my list of one of the most iconic commercials of all time. In 2008, Coca-Cola's portfolio features more than 160 low-calorie and no-calorie drinks, including Coke Zero and Powerade Zero. Some people say that Coke Zero tastes exactly like Coke, and you get all the benefits of the taste without it being so sugary or fattening. I disagree. I can definitely tell a difference in Coke Zero than the regular Coke. And if you say that you don't, you're lying. Because Coca-Cola, without its sugar and without the ingredients of the regular Coke, it doesn't taste like real Coke. It tastes like Diet Coke, which to me is horrible. I would rather drink tea with no sugar in it than to drink a Diet Pop. I hate Diet. It says here that here are the most popular things that people like to have a Coca-Cola with. Burgers being the number one, pizza being number two, French fries number three as being the most popular things that people like to have a Coca-Cola with. And as I was talking about Coke being better in a glass bottle, here was a survey done. It says, how do you prefer to enjoy your Coke? 34% of people say that they prefer their Coke in a glass bottle. 24% of people say they prefer their Coke in a can. 21% says from a fountain, and 21% also say in a plastic bottle. So in a glass bottle is overwhelmingly the winner. A can coming in second, fountain third, and plastic bottle fourth. If I had to rank it, I would say glass bottle would be number one for me. From a fountain would be number two. Can would be three, and plastic bottle four. But we each have our own ways of the way we like to enjoy Coke. But happy National Have a Coke Day, everyone. If you're looking for a way to celebrate it, you can do that by enjoying a Coke yourself. Enjoying a Coke yourself. Share a Coke with somebody. Buy a Coke for somebody. You can also cook with Coke if you want to. Coke adds deep flavor to meals like pot roast. When you pour it over, it kind of moistens the pot roast. You can mix it in with ketchup, and it makes a great barbecue sauce, it says. So you can also mix Coke with your food. People do it with ice cream. They make classic Coke floats is what they call it. By pouring Coke over ice cream, it becomes a Coke float. We love National Coke Day because it's nostalgia, it's delicious, it's versatile. So Coke is the most popular soda in the world. I think it's the best soda in the world. It definitely beats Pepsi, 7-Up, Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper. There is nothing like a classic Coca-Cola. So happy National Have a Coke Day. If you haven't had a Coke in a while and you're looking for an excuse to enjoy a Coke, there is no better day to do it than today. Because, folks, today is National Have a Coke Day. But, folks, that pretty much wraps up today's episode of Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. If you liked what you heard today, you'll probably like our previous episodes. We archive them all on podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. You can follow the show on social media at Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. You can follow me on social media at The Adam Banks. We release new episodes every Thursday from 4 to 5 right here on WLXU 93.9 FM, which means we will be back same time, same place. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Adam Banks, the king of radio, and this is Off the Cuff. I'll catch you down the road.